Well, Beth, again, thank you for taking some time to be with us, and it's an honor to be able to. It's an honor to be able to be a part of what you're doing, and we love being able to serve our local community, but also extend our reach by supporting people that we love and that we believe are doing really good things. So, uh, without any further ado, there's some people at Christchurch who may not know who you are. And for those of you who don't know, this is Beth Horn, one of our ministry partners at Christchurch. And Beth, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Let us know, like, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So I live in Linz, Austria, and I work with refugees here, particularly at a community center that is run by other Christian global workers, and with a different organization. And so what we do is we offer different programs as a way to form relationships with refugees, but also help them integrate into Australia society. So, for instance, there we offer a lot of different German courses. I almost said Deutschkurse because that's the German word. So, if ever I say something that you don't understand, please let me know and I'll try to turn off the German part of my brain. But we offer German courses, and then we also have right now a couple times for men to form relationships with other men, and then friendships and women to get to know other women and form friendships as well. And so we call those cafes because coffee is a big part of Austrian culture. So people come, we drink coffee, maybe have a couple of cookies or cake, and then for the women, we generally sit around and talk. And depending on maybe we'll bring up a topic, or maybe other ladies will bring up a topic. Sometimes we'll do a craft or a game. And if there are kids there, I usually interact with kids because that's my main focus is interacting with the children. The other focus is trauma healing as well. And so I try to integrate some of the trauma healing aspects when I'm working with the kids. But right now, with just how the schedules are, kids are in school. And so we're just meeting with the women, which has actually been a really, I don't want to say fulfilling, encouraging time as we've started to see more women come regularly and then getting to know them on a deeper level. So I've actually been in Austria for 7 years. That my 7 year anniversary is this week. So it's really hard to believe that I've been outside of the US and in Austria for that long, but it's by God's grace that that's happened, and with a lot of support, encouragement, and being carried by prayers, especially from all of you.
So it sounds like these classes they give you an opportunity to form connections that open the door up for the gospel kind of thing. Is that how you would describe it? Or
Yeah, yeah. So, yes. Trying to think through that. So it really depends, of course, upon the person and where they are. So some people that we are ministering to and walking alongside have gone through severe traumas in their journey from their home country to Austria. Others are still trying to figure out and adapt. Maybe they've received asylum, and so now it's what does life look like at that point when you have to get a job and start working but then still learning German along that way. And especially a lot of our people come from honor shame cultures. And so being able to practice their German in a place where they're not going to be criticized. But again, forming relationships with people, connections with people to start that. And so once we start building that, that begins opening those doors. So, for instance, there is actually a Kurdish Bible study that has started to meet because of a group of men, Kurdish men that have been coming to the cafe on Tuesdays. And they're one of our volunteers used to live and serve in Turkey and then had to come back to Austria. And so since he speaks Turkish, he's been building relationships with them. And from that has started a Bible study that there are a couple believers in there and they're growing in their faith, but there are some that are hearing the gospel for the first time.
it sounds like your ministry is does a really awesome job at humanizing people who are trying to find their place in a new world in a new setting, um and it's something that really brings a lot of honor to folks who might not otherwise be honored.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these people, again, for refugees, they've left their home country because of the threat of death. And that can come in a lot of different ways, whether it's from war, whether it's religious persecution. For some of the women, specifically the women from Somalia, it's more from domestic violence, and some of those aspects, or even just ethnic persecution as well, hence the Kurds from Turkey. And so being able just to be somebody who sees them. I think that's something that sometimes we forget is just the power of being seen by another individual and how much that communicates. And we serve the God who sees. And so to be able to give that gift of seeing and being seen to somebody else is what brings them honor. Like they are a real person. And especially for the refugees, how often they go to different appointments, whether it's at government offices or the lawyers or doctors or things, and they're just another piece of paper with a lot of information, but they can come to our center and we're asking them about their day or asking them how it's going, and sometimes depending on the language that they need. One of us may go with them to help translate or that type of thing, or just meet up with them for coffee and get to know them and spend time with them. Again, the aspect of you are a person, you matter, and you're here, and we're so glad that you are.
Hmm. That's really cool. That's really cool. There are people at Christchurch who will look at somebody like you and say, "That's amazing. Look at the awesome things that she's doing," and they can't maybe imagine them doing something similar. I imagine that you felt that way too. So
Mhm.
maybe you can share a little bit about your story and how did you get here? What kind of things did you have to overcome to be a part of this great work overseas?
Yeah. Well, to start off with is I didn't grow up in a believing home. I came to faith after my freshman year in college that I had gotten involved with a Christian campus organization, and it was through honestly making real good friends for the first time, and then seeing what unconditional love was like that helped me understand the unconditional love that God has for us. And that's what led me to accept Jesus as my savior. And throughout the rest of college, it was just, again, growing in the faith, trying to figure out, as you all do at college, is like, what am I supposed to do for the rest of my life? How am I supposed to live? And then after college, with this organization, I went to Japan for 2 months as a missions trip. And so it was my first time overseas. What a big jump. Very different from Midwestern US to go to Japan. Um, but I really enjoyed it, and it was really great. Just again, most of the students that we were interacting with, it was a college student ministry as well there that, again, they had never heard of the Bible before. And so being able to talk with them sometimes for the first time about that. And there were a few Japanese believing students that were also part of the ministry that we got to know well as well and encourage them. And it was at the end of the summer as we're saying goodbye to we were called summer friends. So as we were saying goodbye to our summer friends, I remember going up to one of the believing students. His name's Keiichi, and saying goodbye to him. And he said to me, like, "Don't worry, we'll see each other again." And it just clicked in my mind that how right he was, that whether it was on earth or in heaven, I would see him again. But it also hit me too of like how many of these other friends that I had made and come to love this summer would I never see again because of their lack of faith in Christ. And so came back to the States after that and really just started praying through it. And that's when God was like, no, it's time for me to go. Uh, to go and serve overseas. And so then that's what led me, again, not growing up in the church. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea about all this other stuff. And that's why I ended up going to seminary, which is where John and I met and became friends. And so learned, you know, absolutely all there is to know about the Bible and theology and how to serve overseas, right? No, just started to
Mm.
learn. At least I learned how much I didn't know and how much more I needed to grow. Um, but that's where it led. And so then just through seminary, it was God bringing up different pieces of or giving me different pieces of the puzzle of working with children, because that's how he's created and wired me. And then looking at Europe as a post-Christian place that they have the background of Christianity and is very much within their culture, but they don't understand that aspect, or it's just become just painted over by a lot of other like negativity and sin and secularism. But then also there's this wave of people coming from non-Christian areas in the world that I could never go to as a single white American female. But those people are coming to Europe. They're coming to the States. I mean, the nations are here. It's just that God's called me to leave the US to serve the nations in another place. And so that's just trying to put some of those pieces together of like how do I work with kids in Europe? And it was about that time is when the refugee crisis in Europe came to the forefront of the American media, and that's where after reading those stories and seeing those pictures that God was like, this is how where you need to serve. And so I had joined a mission organization at that time. And so we started looking at different places. And the place that was the best fit, that was willing to have me come and work with children, and that I was wanting to do was here in Austria. And so, yeah, so I moved here in 2017, started learning German, spent about 2 years on that, and then moved here to my city of Linz to moved here 1 month before the pandemic. So started ministry for about a month. Lockdowns came, but then just following God still in the midst of that. And I think to get back to your main question about how God led me here is just that in that sense of like looking to Him and listening to Him, and this is the path that He's guided me on. And um, yeah, it's not been easy at all. Like most missionaries have to raise their own support. And so that's my whole income, and that supports the life, and it also supports the ministry work. But then when I first came, had issues getting my residence permit where I was denied, and then I had to leave Austria for 3 months, and then I came back for 3 months, and then left again for 3 months, and came back before I finally was able to receive my permit because of how the legal system works. Um, I had things shipped from the states that all my valuables and things I wanted for my life, and the shipping company was horrible and left my stuff out in the rain. So when everything arrived, about a third of my belongings had to be thrown away because of mold. And there were just a lot of things like that that God built empathy in me because I could understand I mean, I left my homeland by choice, where a lot of them don't. But I understand what it's like having to work with the government, and they tell you, no, you can't stay here, and they don't really give you a reason why. Or that aspect of waiting and waiting and waiting. And maybe today I'll get a call saying I have an appointment or an interview to get it settled. Maybe, no, maybe today's the day. Maybe today's the day. Or the fact of like losing so many valuables. And I know they're material things, but there's just some things that can't be replaced, whether it's a picture of a loved one or a picture a kid made, or some of those things where you have sentimental value. And a lot of refugees go through that as well, to a much larger degree, let alone leaving family and friends and everything they know behind. And then I mean, there's a whole aspects too of learning a new language as an adult is very difficult. Learning a new culture, a new way to think, a new way to live. But these have all been challenges, but it's just ways that God has, mm, op opportunities God has put in my path to help build empathy and love for refugees and work with them with a deeper understanding.
Mm. That's that's really good. I want to ask a question that's kind of similar to what you were talking about, but going more back to those decision moments and decision weeks, decision months, maybe even decision years. of some of I'd love you to weigh in on some of the fears maybe that you had to overcome to get to where you are now, to leave friends and a familiar setting and everything like that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And with full disclosure, I don't think they've ever really gone away. I think they're always there.
Mm,
Um, but they're mitigated and through God's grace. So just putting that out there of like the first thing that comes to my mind is, can I do this? Can I still do this? Will I make it? And in a lot of ways, the answer is no, I can't do this. But it's only through God's grace that I can. And it's only through God's grace that I can be here, and clinging to Him and holding on to Him. Um, because again, full disclosure, it's really hard. It's really lonely at times. Like if you just think, again, as an adult, there's something about starting over in a completely new city is hard. And as you're forming all new networks and your support systems may be, a couple hours away and you're trying to figure out a new job and everything. But now, like for me, I'm in another country as well. So not only am I trying to figure out where do I grocery shop, and here I don't have a car, so I need to figure out public transportation and all of those things, or even like, how do I make a doctor's appointment or some of those things, like it has to be done in another language as well. Um, and then again, there's the aspect of coming here and I know people, but I don't really know like my friends that I knew in Dallas for 10 or 11 years before I left, those friendships that I made. And so then there's that aspect too of really building those deep, or not building deep, but just trying to just make new friends. How do you make new friends in that situation? And so getting back to the fears, like one of the fears is like, will I always be alone or feel lonely? Or when you start making a friend, um, well, how long is this friend going to stay around? Like, even with the refugees, like a lot of times they get asylum and then they'll move somewhere else because of economic reasons, or maybe they have family in a different setting and so they don't have to stay here anymore. And so, again, it's a very transient population with refugees. It's also a transient population with expats and missionaries. And so there's always this aspect of people don't stick around. And so that just is another level with it. And so, um, and I think too, there is just a fear for the people that we work with because of their safety. Again, they've left for reasons, because their lives are in danger in some form. And so how are we able to care for them in a way that keeps them safe? And then there's always that overarching aspect too of they could be deported. They could receive they're like it's a three strike rule. You receive a negative, you can appeal it, and once you've received three, they will deport you. And so that's really hard when these people are going to go back to death. And that possibility is quite high. And so again, that's a fear of like concern for people and their well-being as well. Um, those are the main ones.
mm. I appreciate I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate that it's not all rosy, that it's real life,
Yeah.
and that we don't it doesn't have to be rosy, wherever you're at and whatever you do for
Yeah.
it to be good.
Well, yes. And I hope I didn't make it seem all like doom and storm clouds. It's not. It's just because there are really great aspects and um but it's also really hard. It's yeah. I That's one thing I've really learned the past couple years is how in a way we have very much, or don't want to generalize, how I have an either or thinking, like it's either good or it's bad. And it's like no, like a lot of times it's both at the same time. And just being able to recognize that and live with gratitude for the good and continuing on with the bad and however it can be. So
Well, kind of with that in mind, let's look at the also, and let's, I'd love to hear about what some of your hopes and are for the future there, and also what gets you excited about with what you're seeing right now.
Yeah. Um, so looking more at the future, one of the hopes that I have is that we'll have a place that can really facilitate a growth in ministry. So for right now, we are sharing space with a local church, and churches here, evangelical churches here, are quite small. And so the room that we have isn't as big as the location we used to have. And we had to leave our location because of it was bought by new people and they were building a new building and had to tear down our building to build the new building because that's how Austrian laws work. And so we didn't have a choice in that matter, had to move out. And so graciously, this church has offered to host us. But just how it is with this one room and trying to schedule all the different programs that we do and to meet the needs of the people is that there's not a place to have a children's program. So, like it is a big room that we meet in, but that would mean the women and the kids are all in the same room, and the kids don't really have a space just for themselves. And that's one things that my kids have said to me is like, no, we really like having our own thing in our own place. Because used to at the old building, moms would be in one room, kids would be in the other, and they really just loved this is our place. And so we've been looking at a lot of different locations, um, looking at, praying through whether we buy a new location or rent. It's difficult here because we are a nonprofit and with just how some of the tax laws work, places don't want to rent or sell to a nonprofit. And then also there's the aspect of that we work with foreigners and people don't want a bunch of foreigners hanging around. So it's been difficult. We've been looking for the past couple years on and off, but more in depth this past year. So a hope would be that we could find a location that, again, to grow the ministry. So we've been going through a vision planning process. And so again, a place like to have a room that I could paint and make it really fun and welcoming for a kid would be for me the greatest thing. For one of my teammates, he's more into creative arts. And so to have a room where he could teach people on different, I mean, he's a fabulous artist, like on how to paint or do stone sculptures or just a lot of different things would be, would fill his heart. Or we need rooms for German classes and a room, for cafe. And so again, praying through what do we really need to have and what we can afford and what's available as well. But that's a little bit of a further hope. Something that's been really encouraging and positive for me these past few months is that used to we'd have it was called International Cafe, and it was just an open time for men, women, and children to come and just kind of hang out. Like we'd have some games for the men, women would kind of sit and talk. And with the kids, I'd play a game or maybe we do some crafts or things like that. But again, just a hangout time to get to know one another and start building those relationships. But again, we meet in one big room. And what was happening last year is that there were just a lot of men coming and they tended to be quite loud with their enthusiasm and enjoyment. And so the women, we were all kind of squeezed into one small corner and couldn't really hear one another talk. And so we made the decision this fall to split the cafes. And so now men meet on Tuesdays and women meet on Thursdays. Um, and it's actually been a really good time that we're seeing a few more women come more consistently. And then just the aspects, or I should say, the depths of conversation that we've been doing that they've been bringing up topics that they never would have brought up with men standing around. And so to be able to connect woman to woman during that time, or even just to hear some of their stories and speak into that, or explain some aspects of Austrian culture and what's acceptable or not acceptable, or, even things with language has been a really good time. It's been really encouraging. And I'm not somebody who really enjoys sitting around and talking or like small talk, things like that. But it has actually has become quite enjoyable. Again, just getting to know these really great ladies and giving them a place to where they can come out of their shells and interact has been really good, really encouraging.
Sounds like you're really starting to build those relationships, which are the bridge to something more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, lastly, Beth, we just love to know how we can be praying for you over this upcoming year.
Yeah. Thanks. Like, yeah, ministry wise, as I mentioned, for our ministry to find a location so that we could do the work that we feel God is calling us to do is our biggest request. And then within that is just for me personally of like praying through some different things of like I still want to work with kids, but what does that look like? Like what are the needs of the kids or what children are coming that type of thing as well. And so how does that all come together and finding my place in the ministry? But then personally too, last year, 2023 was a really hard year and it was a year of loss. And so this year has been just going through recovery and walking through grief. And so a big prayer for 2025 was just would be continuing to grow from grief or through grief. Um, yeah, towards that recovery or not recovery. It's not, grief is weird. It's wounding and yet it's growing at the same time. And so it's this big, messy thing that's beautiful and hard and sad all at the same time. And so I don't know how to explain it because I know that grief will never stop. It just changes. And there is this aspect that it it's not just changing, it's creating something new. Like we can never go back to before the event that caused the grief. And so God's in this process of a new creation. And so not sure what that's going to look like, but that I would continue to cling to him during this process. That was a big word soup, spaghetti soup. I'm very sorry. But
Well,
that's
Beth,
grief.
is there anything else you want to share before we wrap our time together?
Yeah, just quick. I just wanted to give a really heartfelt thank you to all the people at Christ Church Amherst. I think y'all are the best, and I love you. I, I'm clearly not great with words, but I just want to let you know that how much I appreciate you. Um, I can tell that you all pray for me, that you all are standing with me and beside me and behind me and going before me, walking along this journey of building God's kingdom together. And I wanted to let you know that your encouragement, your giving, your support is not gone unnoticed, and is wholly appreciated and just very dear. So I'm very grateful for you all.